xanthan gums, all these fillers that are high starch, which you're going to learn as we get into this why that creates just as much of a problem as the gluten and the casein. Basically what Dr. McBride says is that it does not address the whole picture. It is true that that is happening with the proteins, but it doesn't address the underlying reason of why these aren't being digested. What about elimination diets? I know when I was nursing my son and being told by several doctors to quit nursing him, we were down to 2 foods. We were down to rice and chicken. Those were the only 2 foods that didn't cause him to bleed. You can only eat rice and chicken for so long until you're nutrient deficient. So you can eliminate foods forever and continue to make your diet smaller and smaller and smaller, or you can fix the underlying reason why you can't eat those foods. Phenol and salicylate-free diets, there's a theory out there that all foods have phenols. It's kind of what protects the food. It's like if you cut an apple and it turns brown, that's the phenolic compounds in the apple that are trying to protect it. So there's high phenol foods, and there's an idea that if you go off of high phenol foods that you won't react anymore. We went on a whole program of that, had homeopathic drops to help with it. And it was very limited in its scope of helping us. And the reality is all foods on the planet have phenols. So if you want to not eat, you can go on a phenol-free diet. The Candida diets. Oh yes, we tried them many, many times. And honestly, they never worked. They really never did anything for us. And now I know why. They don't eliminate grains. They typically allow rice or small amounts of grains or small amounts of potatoes or whatever it might be. And it's simply feeding your opportunistic flora. So they're long-term probably not going to work. You may see some benefit depending upon what you're cutting out, but ultimately the gut damage continues. I would propose instead, if you're interested, let's try the g.a.p.s diet. g.a.p.s is a therapeutic diet, which means it's not going to last forever. g.a.p.s heals the underlying problem. It restores the health of your digestive system, allowing you to enjoy most foods again. And I know that has been our experience for sure. Foods I thought we'd never eat again, we're enjoying just without difficulty, without any problems at all. 2 years is the average time on g.a.p.s. Some are more, some are less. My daughter and my husband have experienced like the ultimate in healing, more than we would have ever expected. So they're venturing out, they're eating more foods and having no problems. My son, he's still got a ways to go, so we'll stick on it for a while, but the improvement's been dramatic with him too. So 2 years is a general time frame, maybe more, maybe less, but it actually accounts for healing time. It's not just a quick stint. You don't just try it for a couple months and expect the results. You've got to give yourself time. 2 years is typically when people are like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I know for us, I had thought about the time we had spent searching and trying and searching and trying, and to me, 2 years, I was like, sign me up. If we can be done with this stuff in 2 years, sign me up. I'll do it. Because otherwise, I promise you, I'd still be where we were 2 years ago, struggling. One of the ultimate things learned from g.a.p.s is sacrifice, giving up of something good for something better. What do we eliminate on g.a.p.s? And again, this is why I prefaced it with this isn't forever. So you don't look at this list and go, oh, I can't do it. All grains, 100%, even rice. Everything, all grains, sprouted, fermented, everything, all grains. Anything made with grains, anything with grains in it, out. We were sprouting and fermenting our grains for about 2 years, gluten-free grains. And it just wasn't cutting it. And learning about opportunistic flora, knowing what they feed on, you can see why. I would love for someone to study the carbohydrate content of a fermented grain to see why. I mean, because they say if it's sprouted and fermented, it's more like a vegetable. I'd love it if someone could study why a fermented grain responds differently in the gut than, say, a fermented bean or a fermented vegetable. But anyway, that's just my own thinking. Okay, so starchy vegetables, potatoes, yams, sweet potatoes, parsnips, Jerusalem artichokes, cassava, arrowroot, taro root. There's a list of more, but that gives you the general idea. Sugar. Sugar's an easy one. That's like a no-brainer. Of course, we all need to cut out sugar. Starchy beans and peas, soy, mung, garbanzo, bean sprouts, fava, pinto. There's a list of a few more, but you cut those out. Lactose, which means milk. But fear not, you will still need real foods milk. It will just come in a different form. Commercial yogurts, commercial buttermilks, commercial creams, commercial sour creams, anything commercial with dairy is out, even if it's fermented. Okay? This is Dr. McBride's quote. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to make sure that not even a speck of anything made from sugar, grains, or starchy vegetables sneaks into the menu. Far from starving, you will be receiving a most nourishing diet. So why eliminate these healthy foods? We know that grains and beans and milk and vegetables are good for us. So why are we eliminating these? We've got to go back to where this research started. And this is in large part where the g.a.p.s diet, structure of the g.a.p.s diet came from. There was a doctor in like the early mid to 1900s named Dr. Haas. He discovered that his patients with bowel disease could digest fats and proteins quite well, but not complex carbohydrates. So he does all this research and develops what's called the specific carbohydrate. It's published in this big medical textbook and becomes the standard. And it's widely accepted in the mainstream medical world as the treatment for bowel disease. What happens is it starts getting prescribed over a period of several years, and patients aren't adhering to it. They're learning more about categorizing bowel diseases, and they start to get their own diagnostic boxes, like celiac disease gets this, and irritable bowel gets this. And so they start separating the treatments, and subsequently, specific carbohydrate diet starts collecting dust on the shelf, and nobody wants to talk about it anymore because it's too hard, it's too complex, and they're treating celiac disease just fine with the gluten-free diet, and it just kind of goes by the wayside. Well, several years later, a mother searching for an answer for her daughters, I think it was colitis or Crohn's or something like that, finds the SCD diet, finds Dr. Haas, goes and visits with him, puts her daughter on the diet for I think a period of 1.5 to 2 years, and heals her. I'm pretty sure it was colitis. I think she was a nurse. She becomes really passionate about spreading this, writes a book called Breaking the Vicious Cycle, which is the first book I came upon that led me to g.a.p.s. So this is the book about the specific carbohydrate diet. Anyway, what this book teaches is another critical point. Just as important as understanding your flora, you need to understand this. So why can I not have those grains? And why do I not eat those vegetables? And why do I not drink that milk or whatever it might be? Well, Dr. Haas already knew all of this, that all carbohydrates are made of a molecule called monosaccharide. Mono meaning one, so one molecule. Easy to digest. Essentially doesn't need digestion because it's already broken down to one molecule. It can just be absorbed. Okay? So glucose, fructose, and galactose are the main monosaccharides in the human diet. Honey, most ripe fruits, most vegetables, and most fermented foods contain one or a combination of these monosaccharides, which means when you eat them, they're very easy to digest. I say ripe fruit because if the fruit is not ripe, it's actually not a monosugar yet. So that's why on this diet, ripe fruit is extremely important. Bananas that are brown. I love it when the red tape bananas go on sale. I'm like, that's how we eat them. So they've got to be ripe in order to be that digestible monosugar, okay? So the other type of sugar is a disaccharide, which means double sugar. It has to be broken into a monosugar to be digested. Well, a compromised gut that doesn't have enough beneficial flora to break down these disaccharides doesn't break them down. And that you can go further into polysaccharides, which are multiple disaccharides, and then you're really in trouble. They say even healthy intestines can have a problem breaking these down. Anyway, disaccharides are sucrose, which is table sugar, lactose, which is milk sugar, maltose, which is starches and grains. Okay, so the undigested double sugars feed the microbes even more. They're not being digested and absorbed into your body. They're just free-for-all for these opportunistic and these transitional flora. They're just going to be in heaven. Thank you for feeding me so I can grow and populate your gut even more. So that is the reasoning behind cutting these foods out. It's not that these foods are bad. Well, sugar, I'm going to say sugar is bad, but every other food that you're cutting out is not because it's like on the X list forever. It's just simply because your body's not digesting it properly right now. What do you eat on g.a.p.s is the next question. Meats, grass-fed, pasture-raised, which is why you're already real foods shoppers because you're here, but you will be even more frequent real foods shoppers. That's why I say, Anne, you were my first contact when I was looking for bones. Like, how can I get a lot of bones? Not just one little package, I need a lot. You'll be making bone broth. This will be the staple in your fridge, and you will have many, many, many jars of it. You can make bone broth out of any type of good, healthy bones you can find: beef, lamb, chicken, venison, whatever you might be able to find. Eggs that are farm fresh, non-starch and low-starch fresh vegetables, fruits and berries that are ripe, fermented foods, not fermented grains, but fermented vegetables, fermented dairy, nuts and seeds, beans and pulses, some beans, there are some allowed beans, honey, clean water, fresh pressed juices, not store-bought commercial juices, but fresh juices, herbal teas, fats and oils, and homemade yogurt and kefir. Does that sound like Real Foods mission or what? So there's a lot of foods. There's a lot of foods on the diet, and honestly, truly, like, I like being on g.a.p.s because I love the food so much. So it's probably, in some ways, it might not be that much different than how some of you are eating now. You might just have to cut a few things out. Supplementation on g.a.p.s. Dr. McBride says that the appropriate diet has to be the #1 intervention. A lot of supplements may irritate an already inflamed and damaged gut lining and interfere with the healing process. You do not want to put a lot of effort into implementing the diet, then spoil the whole process by a pill. However, some supplements can be very beneficial and are essential. I know that we have been supplement junkies in the past. Like, our cupboard, I mean, we were constantly trying things, and not that we were trying to look for a shortcut, but we really just thought it was going to help us, you know. And we went off of all of our supplements. When we started g.a.p.s, the only supplements we did was the ones suggested here, and that still is the only supplements that we do. Therapeutic strength probiotic, critical. Therapeutic strength, which means it's not just your typical probiotic that you can get anywhere. It's got to be a really, really good one. And there's specifics in the book about how many billions of microbes there should be in the probiotic to qualify. She has a specific brand, BioCult, that she recommends. We've tried it. We switch our probiotics a lot just to make sure that we're constantly throwing a variety of bacteria in our gut. So BioCult does work good though. Cod liver oil. You sell this Green Pastures. It's the best. I highly recommend it. I won't lie, it doesn't taste the best, but it is the best. You'll get used to it though. It's not so bad now. Cod liver oil. Dr. McBride also recommends the fermented cod liver oil. A fish oil that has a higher EPA than DHA content. And you can take a nut seed blend with a 2-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. The ratio is really critically important. It's important that you cut out all vegetable oils because they have an extremely high sunflower oil, safflower oil, things like that. They have a really high omega-6 content, and that will throw off your gut flora balance really, really quickly. So if you take a nut seed blend, be sure it's a 2-to-1 omega-3 to 6 ratio.